dark side.
2, 1, 0.
What was that? It was a voice from beyond the grave. Oh my goodness. Oh. Welcome, RetroUnlimers. Oh no! So, what was that? Welcome to your doom. Do welcome to your doom.
Another video.
Say welcome to your doom. Yes. Oh yes, one for all the Mega Drive fans out there. That. Yes, thank you very much, Max.
You're welcome.
Welcome, RetroUnlimers, to a very special one-off interview edition of RetroUnlim Live. Tonight, RetroUnlim.com presents the From Bedrooms to Billions live Q&A with some very exciting special guests, which I will now introduce, wasting absolutely no more time. We've also got some questions, but before we go on to that, it's time to introduce the participants. We have, from left to right, Anthony and Nicola Caulfield. Hello.
Hello.
Good evening. Hi. Did I pronounce your name correctly there? Your second name?
Yes.
Caulfield. Caulfield?
Caulfield, yeah.
Ah, right. So it's from Caulfield, as in a field of coal. Yes.
Yeah, cool, yes.
Coal.
Cool, yeah, as in...
Oh, Coolfield, yes.
Cool, as in I called the milkman, or is that right? I don't know. It doesn't matter. It's not something that people tend to actually ask us, actually. Is that a good start or a bad one?
I don't know. It's a start, and a start's a start, I guess. What's going on? No. We're going to keep getting voices from beyond the grave this evening, ladies and gentlemen.
It's because you've got these musos on here as well, you see. They're just going to follow around with their blood.
So would you like to introduce yourself, or should I read this pre-scripted paragraph that I have here? I think this might be a little bit more, well, not professional, but it might be a way of bigging you up. No, there's no way I can be more professional than you guys. But
oh my God! I'm really going to let you do what you need to do.
So it says here. This is actually from your Kickstarter account for the Bedroom to Billions. It says, Nicola and Anthony have written, produced and directed various acclaimed documentaries for theatrical broadcast and commercial release, including The Story of the Young Ones, Doctor Who, Stripped for Action, for the BBC,
Yep.
as well as George Michael, Faith, and Jeff Wayne's War of the Worlds for Sony Music. Now, something interesting here, it says, they were commissioned by the government of Macau to produce the official documentary film on the East Asian Games, and have also worked with the rock group Pink Floyd to produce theatrical and television versions of their film Pulse, which was distributed worldwide. Now, as a Pink Floyd fan, I actually have a question for you here. What exactly was your involvement in that? Were you involved in the... I think there was a release of the DVD, wasn't there? Was it that? Were you mastering that?
It was actually quite a long job, because basically the original production was shot at Earl's Court in 1994 on Beta SP videotape, analog videotape, and there hadn't been a DVD or even a TV transmission of it from beyond sort of 2001, 2002, because obviously the broadcast standards had gone up, and because it had been shot in effectively videotape, it was deemed the quality was too poor to release on DVD, let alone obviously Blu-ray hadn't quite sort of taken hold at that point. So basically, we'd worked on a number of restoration projects where we've been around a little while, and one of the things that we actually specialised in is actually restoration work, archive and restoration of old film and other things. We've done quite a few of those over the years. A lot more than is actually on our bios, and we were basically, for want of a better word, headhunted. We were just asked. Literally, a phone call came up out of the blue one day from EMI, and just said we have a band, and we have some old material that we'd like you to take a look at and to do an evaluation on. So we went away, and within sort of 30 seconds we were able to pretty much work out that it was Pink Floyd. We looked at it, and then we went away and checked out, and we used something. We used the company and oversaw the restoration using an Archangel, which I don't know if you know much about. Is a digital process where effectively it takes an image and enhances it and expands it. So if you imagine something's this big, and then you need to get it to this size. Can you see my hands on screen?
Yes.
This size, you need to actually increase the pixels and various other sort of complex algorithms and other things. So we oversaw that, and while that was happening, we worked directly with Floyd themselves and James Guthrie. If you're a Floyd fan, you know James Guthrie. He's worked with them for a very, very long time. On basically the 5.1 surround mix was being done of the actual soundtrack. So we actually worked very carefully with him to lay the audio back in, and then the project just continued. The more they liked, the more they asked to be done. So we then started taking some of their original concert films that they would project onto the back screen, and we started intercutting those into the film. And then in the end, it actually became a film because they were so impressed with it that it was a different cut. We turned it into a film cut of 96 minutes, I seem to remember, and it was actually given a limited theatrical release, of which we went to the premiere. We were invited to the premiere, and there's a very long story of how we nearly Nicola was pregnant with our first child while we were sitting there, and Dave Gilmour was several seats ahead in front of us, and the HD projector that I'd personally loaded jammed halfway through the performance.
Oh no!
It jammed for 2 seconds. 2 seconds. And if you imagine this is the Empire Leicester Square, full of journalists, Pink Floyd, various other music celebrities there, all sitting there watching the screen, and the whole thing's on our heads. And then when Dave Gilmour was in the middle of a solo, just for 2 seconds it jams, and then it resumed. No one really batted an eyelid, but we were dying because we were thinking, "Oh God, projectors don't jam. That should never happen. How can that happen?" So I'm sitting there in the audience, and basically I'll never forget. For the rest of the bloody film, the next 45 minutes was a living nightmare. And then I'm thinking, and at the very end, in the song Eclipse, I'm watching the sun and the moon gradually coming together, and I'm thinking, if it jams now, it's going to be even worse. The sun and the moon Eclipse, the end credits came up, and the lights came up, and a big round of applause. It looked great. But in a very long story, that is our involvement with Pink Floyd, and then after that, they asked us to do a television edit as well. So getting a cheque from Dave Gilmour was quite a good thing. We almost didn't want to bank it because of. But yeah, that's the story. Did I answer your question? I think so.
Yes, absolutely, yes. And actually, music is a good subject to be speaking about right now. Excuse me, just went a bit falsetto there. Staying with the music theme, we have music engineer Max Hall. Hello.
Hello.
That's a fancy device you have there.
Not really, it's just a delay set up on my insert.
Well, as far as I'm concerned, that's very, very exciting.
It's an old trick.
It's an old trick, but a goodie. So what exactly was your involvement with Bedroom to Billions? Or is your involvement, I should say?
Well, still is. I'm going. I would have thought. I got asked to produce the soundtrack for it, basically. Long story. I kind of bumped into Anthony at a Play Expo, I think it was. Was it in Manchester?
No, it was actually, I think it was Games Britannia where we first met.
It was Games Britannia.
We interviewed Ben. Where we interviewed Ben.
But you didn't really know I was doing music then, did you? I think we just kind of bumped together and had a chat.
That's right.
But I seem to remember we were it was lucky enough we were in the same hotel together. And I think we sat down and had a meal, and I just says, "Can I send you a demo?" basically. And,
but not the same room.
Not in the same room, no. That was awful.
Old press folks.
Yeah.
I don't know. It just kind of went from there. I just kind of kept bumping into Anthony. It was weird, and just said I did music and stuff, and I sent you a demo, didn't I? And it kind of went from there. Really.
I think one of the key things, Max, was actually when we did the interview with Rob. That's Rob Hubbard, folks. He said, "I'm working with this guy
Yeah.
and I'm thinking of doing a bit of music with him. And he was quite secretive, and I didn't sort of want to pry. And he said, if something goes well with this guy, I'll send it to you, and maybe you can use it for the film. And this was before we decided, before we even launched the Kickstarter campaign, and we sort of weren't sure whether we were even going to do a soundtrack or just use purely licensed music. And it was just one of those funny coincidences where basically this guy turned out to be Max, who we'd already been speaking with and exchanging some soundtrack ideas with and everything, and it was just like a natural fit, really. I don't really remember there being any sort of... There was no tender process or anything like that. It was like Max was the guy. That was it. It was just...
It was a surprise to me, that, to be honest with you, because I assumed that you'd spoke to Rob about me. And that it didn't happen like that. Rob was already aware of me and spoke to Anthony, and we both spoke to Anthony. We didn't know each other then, really. I'd corresponded with Rob on email, but I didn't know him as a friend like I do now. And it was just weird how it all came together like that. I still can't believe it happened like that, but it did. And that's one of the great mysteries of life, I guess. But
it was strange, and there was some real happy coincidences there. But it's been a. I mean, this is the sort of muso sort of back patting that goes on, and usually it should be at the end of the interview. But Max has been nothing but a total pro all the way through the creation of the soundtrack. I mean, there's not been anything we've asked. It's not been that's not been sorry, that's got to come out wrong. So there's not been anything we've asked that's not been basically everything has been a pleasure. It's been very, very easy to work with, and
it's been an absolute pleasure.
We're at a point in the film now where what's happening is a body of music has been created, and effectively tracks have been created that can obviously be used on the album. But we're now in the process where we're editing the film, and obviously we then go back to Max with more specific timings so that we can then shape what's been created to the picture. So that's but those versions won't necessarily be released, but it'll be the actual proper track versions of the music that will be released. But so it's still very organic, isn't it?
Yes,
what's happening?
Yeah.
So who exactly created the music tracks for the film?
Basically, Rob, Ben, I've added a couple of bits. Max has been involved in every track, and now
The other guys involved.
reveal that Martin Galway is now going to be adding music to the film. Having looked into him just yesterday, he's going to be working with Max in December and January. He's got 2 songs he wants to add, 2 tracks he wants to add.
We've also got Mark Knight on board, the Mad Fiddler, who's done a very good version of one of his tracks, which we've recorded as well, which is cool.
And I'm not just overplugging it, but the standard of the music that's come through so far is astounding.
Oh, the quality is fantastic.
It's absolutely astounding. I mean, Nicola's...
It's an absolute joy to edit to it as well. It's brilliant. Absolutely fantastic.
There's a fantastic one Ben's done, which is the Broken Knee Hornpipe. Is it Broken Knee Hornpipe, Ben?
Yeah.
Mate, that is just outstanding.
So tell us about the Broken Knee Hornpipe.
I'll let Ben tell you about that.
Yes, Ben.
Thomas is cool.
It just came. Literally, I wrote it in about. God, how long did it take, Max? I wrote it in the studio.
You did. It didn't take long, did it?
3 hours, wasn't it?
Something like that. It's just breaking up at my end, Ben, so I'm just lip syncing a little bit. Oops, what did I do then?
Oh, it's still a little bit glitchy.
Glitchy. My connection.
Speak. Say something. We can't hear you. You keep dropping out, unfortunately.
Ladies and gentlemen, Ben is still in the building.
I'll be back.
How's that? Any better?
Little better, yeah, I can hear you now, mate.
That's a lot better, actually.
An audio.
It's a bit Blur Witch, but... Ah, no!
Nicola's just popped out for a moment because our son is calling down from upstairs. It's like, what the hell are you talking to, basically?
My dog does that sometimes.
Can you hear me, Mother?
Yes.
Broken knee. Matt.
Yes, I would like to introduce Mr. Ben Daglish, who has composed and transcribed thousands of tracks for an almost inexhaustible list of computer systems. He has worked on Auf Wiedersehen Monty for the Commodore 64, Masters of the Universe for the ZX Spectrum, and produced countless ST's tunes for Gremlin Interactive. So how are you, Ben? And what exactly has been your involvement with the official soundtrack?
You had that written down, didn't you?
Of course. Everything I say is written down.
Actually, it was really funny what we just did the whole thing with the characters about Max, because I've known Max for a few years as well. Max lives just up the road from me. We know lots of the same people and have been involved with the same music scene for years, you know. So when Anthony then said he asked me to contribute to the soundtrack album as well, and because originally I was interviewed for the film. There's some footage of me talking about being an opera, basically, and then later on he rang up and said, you know, we started talking about the soundtrack thing, and he said that Rob had been working with this guy called Max Hall, and I went, oh, what, Max? Yeah, right. And so it was just I jumped in there. I went round to Max's, and we put together some tracks. One of which, yes, I was just saying, was this hornpipe, which just it just came together. I was sitting in his garden, and this tune just in my head, and about 3 hours later, it was done, pretty much.
It's brilliant as well. Just classical instruments, wasn't it? It just happened, didn't it?
It's a standard orchestral set, and yes, when we were pushing around for titles, I thought the broken knee hornpipe fit perfectly. Been around for the last how many months.
Yeah.
Ben, is there any way that you can switch back to your laptop? Because I think we can sacrifice the quality of the picture for a little bit better audio, because you keep dropping out, unfortunately.
Hold on.
Might be a cue to have a tiddle here. Hang on. Be right back.
Don't worry, everybody always goes for P's on the RetroUnlim live stream, so you're in prestigious company.
Is it just me now then? Because Nicola's gone upstairs,
Yes,
gone somewhere, and Max has gone for a wee.
it's just me and you. Well, actually, while it is just me and you, I can take this opportunity to let everybody out there in live stream land know that you can indeed leave your comments for the guys in the live stream this evening, and I'll be asking them a little bit later on.
Hello.
So, hello Ben, you're back.
Yeah, you can hear me, but not see me.
You were in the middle of the story about the hornpipe, I believe.
That was it. Wrote a hornpipe, called it after Max.
Oh, okay.
Yes, I've got a hornpipe, apparently.
Yeah.
He's got the hornpipe.
And a broken knee.
Stop it. I don't know. I thought it would be nice because, well, in terms of the tunes that I wrote anyway, I was trying to get into the whole feel of the mood of the thing, and you know, the 80s feel and all the rest of it. And so but then there's always the thing about your influences and all that. And one of my big influences, I think, is orchestral music. And I've done lots of orchestral stuff, and so I thought, oh, it'd be nice to contribute just a pure classical orchestral track, but that could be sort of game soundtracky as well, you know. And it appeared. Lovely.
They were brilliant.
Max, the audio's 1,000 times better, but you look like a suspect of Police 5.
Yeah.
You're not the first person to ever say that.
Laptops. So that's why he looks like a silhouette now. But it's
yeah. It's something to do with the lighting.
Sorry.
Yeah, hold on. If I now use the torch on the phone.
People listening are good. This film's in safe hands.
They can understand how Barmer well to put it all together, though, I guess. Guys,
it's because all of us are just working in dark rooms all day. You see, we're editing, they're doing music, and when we get out, we just misbehave in this way. So it's just to be expected.
it's the lack of vitamin C and sunshine.
Notice how we haven't talked about games or anything.
No, sod that for a lot. Hey, look, there we go.
That's cool, Ben.
You have to sit like that for the whole evening now.
That's it.
Ooh. It was a dark and stormy night.
There we go.
International C64 Man of Mystery.
When you're doing that, could you just say, return the map, return what you've stolen from me? Would that affect it?
Guys, if you've got any requests for things for Max to say with the delay, please write in.
Chat in there.
Please write it. I'm enjoying this.
You know, there's scope, isn't there, for a website using like HTML5 audio and stuff like that. A website that just does a delay.
Yeah.
So you can click on the site and anybody can get it.
You're the man. You're the coder.
Quickly copyright that.
People out there, you can have that for free. There we go.
No
Well,
pay.
well, speaking of the soundtrack and fancy special effects, Anthony, I believe you've prepared some exclusive soundtrack snippets for us tonight. Is that correct?
I'm afraid I haven't.
Oh.
Because this is the first time ever using Google Hangouts, I still can't work out how to feed the music internally through the system. It seems to just doesn't work. I mean, Max, have you got? Are you able to do it from your end?
I think so.
I can't.
Foundation Studio thing.
When I do it, it just kills the web. It just kills the whole thing.
I can feed it through my sub. Hopefully it'll work.
Oh, this is going to be good.
Yes.
Plenty of delay on it.
Shall we? Hang on. Just give me a mo, and I'll just.
I think we'd start with the blast of the theme tune if we can do it. Yeah. Did you like the slick way that when you said I believe you prepared that, and I said no, we haven't.
Oh, it's okay. This is the way that the live stream usually goes. Nothing is prepared at all. But we'll pretend it has been.
I did try,
professional.
but I wasn't able to switch the inputs over. It was as simple as that. We lost the connection every time. We tried it.
Okay,
Oh,
I think I might be able to do it. I'll just have to be very careful.
Oh, excellent.
Back.
And will it pipe it through, or will it be or will you just hear it over your speakers there?
Hang on, I'll just play the first bit, shall I, and see if you guys can hear it.
Yep.
I've certainly heard that.
Yes, it's slightly too loud, I think.
Okay. How about now?
By the way, the speaker. Oh, that's good.
That's good, yes.
Okay. That works?
Here we go.
Do you want me to play this?
Yes, please.
This is the Rob Hubbard Themes to the Bedrooms to Billions soundtrack.
Oh, super, super.
Wasn't it?
Oh. Thanks. That was fantastic. Oh, it's still going. Yes.
I hope you're getting an exclusive there.
That was actually the first thing that Rob did for the soundtrack.
Right, bear with me. Sorry about that. These guys are getting an exclusive.
Ooh.
Yeah.
RetroUnlim Live, always first with the exclusives.
Find the bugger.
That's not the theme tune. That's from the soundtrack. There you go.
I got it. Okay, I got the right track this time, man.
Partner.
I got
Go, partner.
Shall we try this?
Yeah, great.
We do Frontier.
And Max, remember the brief for this? Was given to Rob about the number of interviewees. The 80s was lawless, like the Wild West.
Oh, sorry, Max, I muted you there. You'll have to unmute yourself. Sorry, I just muted you so Anthony could speak then.
Is it on YouTube?
Yes.
Sorry, just a little bit of a technical hitch there. There's nothing new to regular viewers of the RetroUnlim live stream. But I noticed the... Oh! We're back in again.
That's not working?
Great, and then these That was exciting. Could you guys hear me when I was explaining what sounds Wild West?
Okay, Max, I believe that's enough of a clip for now. That's absolutely fantastic, though.
Sorry about that. I can't hear you when I'm playing that, so that's cool.
Ah, yes, the trials of Google Hangouts. Never mind, eh?
We're not doing bad first time we've ever used it.
There's a reason why the track is has a Wild West feel to it.
Mhm.
It's basically when we sat down back in February and started sharing ideas for the film, rather than just creating a bunch of tunes that don't really have any relation to the film, we sat down and started putting together the sort of basic script, and sort of said these are certain sections that keep cropping up, and one of them was in the very early days, in the very early 80s. A lot of the interviewees, lots and lots of them, kept using words like lawless. It was like a new frontier. It was like the Wild West. This sort of Wild West motif, this phrase kept cropping up all the time, and we basically that was one of the things that we just happened to say to Rob was Wild West, and he just thought, right. And one of the tracks he immediately went off and started putting together was a Wild West track.
Yes, I really think that did actually come across in that. Yeah. And also, I like the guitar solo. Did Rob play that himself?
Now we've got a session musician in to do the guitars on that.
No. I'd like to think that these 80s, people such as yourself, these 80s coding whizzes, would have done all the music themselves on all the instruments. I'm sure Ben would do that because he's a multi-instrumentalist, aren't you?
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, as it happened with this, I didn't do any live playing, but I was. I'm hopefully going to be getting together with Max soon and doing a bit of acoustic recording actually.
Oh, cool.
I was going to for the Hewson book. They were wanting to put together a soundtrack, and I was going to do an acoustic version of Firelord, just with myself doing flute and guitar on it. I thought it might be quite nice.
Love a bit of that, my friend.
Yeah, yeah. But no, all of this was just using the vast array of gear that you see behind Max there.
Oh, we never use any of that.
Well, it's all just for show. It's all VST plugins.
Just a microphone and a guitar with that, and it's cool.
I think there's been quite a good collaboration, actually. We've just done an interview with Computer Music, the magazine, and we were explaining to them that there's a real nice amalgamation of real instruments and, you know, electronic music and plugins and lots of other things to really create something quite different. It's
true, yeah.
I think that I was talking with somebody about it at Play Expo, actually, and I think they were genuinely surprised that the music wasn't quite what they thought. They just assumed that it would all just be SID tunes or something like that, and that's in no way disrespect to a lot of fantastic music that's out there. It's just that the composers that came in for this basically wanted to just try and do something different and not necessarily what was expected.
It was nice to actually be able to produce something with those old school ideas but use the latest technology, but not overdo it. You know, I mean,
I love those. I've always loved those 8-bit gunshots on that track.
Yeah.
Yeah, they just sound slightly bit crushed.
Yeah.
And there's a little bit of bit crushing at the end as well. And
yeah, there's little ways of doing that. I mean, you can get sample rates down to whatever nowadays with technology. Great. You can make it sound old school. But I still like to use the old hardware, as you know. But it was really good to actually be able to produce something with these guys that still had the old school feel, but use today's technology, but don't overdo it. If you see what I mean, I thought that attracted me to this, and I think it has worked. I mean, because obviously we're still trying to keep the feel of the film Bedrooms to Billions in there, you know, and try and make it work with visuals, which is difficult because I haven't seen a lot of that. I'll be honest with you. So that's obviously Nicola's job to edit all that in there. Sorry to put the pressure on. But I think it will work, and I think it's been great what we've produced so far. I mean, I'm really pleased with what we've done, and I hope Ben, Rob, and everybody else I've worked with feels the same. You know, I mean,
It's been a top job.
To see it work. It has been a top job.
It's been amazing to be able to kind of go, oh, that hi-hat note is just out. Can you fix it for me, please, Max? Yeah. All those kind of little, really loads of little niggly things that I've been getting really quite anal about. The fade-out's not quite right. It's not quite right. Do it again. Do it again.
I didn't make it at 3 o'clock in the morning. Can you just change that?
But no, it's been a pleasure to work with, actually. It is the understanding, actually, of I mean, I don't want to keep using these old school 8-bit terms and stuff, but an understanding of the sensibilities, which has made it easier. It's been a lot easier working with Max than if it would have been working with a kind of a traditional record producer or something. Do you know what I mean? Yeah, a lot of people would want to kind of overdo it, but Max has been very much respectful of this is what the composer wants to do. And this is how they want to do it, you know, and I've been really happy with the results.
Brilliant.
Excellent. Okay, I think it's time to open up the floor to a few questions. We've had quite a lot of questions emailed into us, so we're going to kick off with those, but then after that, guys, we're going to be going to the comments box for this particular stream, and I'm going to be picking out the best comments and asking them to the panel. Or rather, asking the best questions to the panel. That's better, isn't it? Yes.
Oh, can I see the comments box? Can we read them as well?
Yes, indeed you can. If you load up the actual stream in a different window, but there again, it could crash the web, so beware.
Oh, yeah, right, okay. Yeah, right. It'd be Google type deal. It'll get infinite rejection.
Serious paradox feedback.
No, all right.
Yes, we have actually had a few.
Oh, no, there we go. Q&A. Oh, opening audience questions. It's downloading the app now.
Excellent.
Except this feature is disabled. Oh, all right.
Well, it knows what you're doing. It knows your game.
Fate. Google will stop you.
No.
Max, can you introduce the next segment? Could you say, and now it's time for the questions with the echo?
And now, it is time for questions.
Oh, that is so much fun.
Inquisitor. Yeah.
Well, first up, we've got a question from Harry. That's me, incidentally. If you're watching this, hi, Harry. Hello.
Hello, Henry.
Hello, Harry.
Doodle-doo.
I'll do intro tunes for all the questions. How's that?
Yeah, yes, why not? That would be fantastic. Oh, yes.
Luke.
It's just a silhouette on the screen, look.
Brilliant. Go on, Sam.
Right, so the 4 Bedrooms to Billions Kickstarter account reached its funding goal in April of this year. And some fantastic perks on the Kickstarter project included a signed limited edition soundtrack CDs, a BBC B Micro signed by Jeff Crammond, and a box copy of Elite. Now, how complete is the movie at this stage? Is it still in post-production? I'm guessing it is. And are we still on course for the January 2014 release?
It's still in post-production. There's still a lot of editing going on. We are aiming for January, but the thing that's happening now is because we're starting to get more cuts of the film together, some people that maybe originally weren't up for being in the film are now coming forward and saying, actually, we would like to take part. So we're just waiting to see if we can confirm some more people to be interviewed, and if we do, that might cause a slight delay in that, but until we know that, we're just in discussions with a few people at the moment.
I think one of the things that's really important to understand about the film is that it's not something that we intend to release and then release subsequent special edition, like alternate versions and other things. We want to release it. There is a special edition, a 2-disc one that to meet for the Kickstarter, some of the Kickstarter donors, but we don't want to be doing multiple versions or updates where it's another 6 or 7 people came forward. There is an end in sight. We do need to finish the film, but we've been editing it for a very long time, so it's not as if we're just sort of sitting there with nothing done. But the thing is, it is such a dense story, and there are genuinely so many different voices. This is not. It's not 2 hours of game making ofs or anything like that. It's personal stories from those that were there at the time, and sometimes you just get you do an interview with somebody and it opens up a pathway. It opens up a stream of knowledge you just didn't know anything about, and then you have to follow it up. So the film is a very different beast to what it was when we ran the original Indiegogo campaign. Where it was going to be 90 minutes. When we did the Kickstarter, we expanded it and said it would be 2 hours long. Now we're still looking at a 2-hour version of the film, but from where it was in May to what it is now, it's a lot more detailed. I mean, we're up to nearly 100 interviews now, whereas back on the Indiegogo campaign, we envisaged no more than 40, and with Kickstarter, we thought we'd have 70. Now we've got nearly 100.
I will say obviously I'm editing it every day, and when you start seeing all the people coming together, it's really looking good. It's something, there's bits you watch and you think, oh, that really makes the hairs on the back of your neck stand up, and it's coming together so well that when some of these people have come forward, we're like, well, actually, that can only enhance bits. But, we do have an ending goal. We have to complete this. We need to get it out there, sometimes you can get a little bit into these projects too much and you think, oh, I'm never going to stop, I want to tweak this, I want to tweak that. We're certainly not like that. We have got a very good structure there now, and it's just a case of working out how we're going to fit these other people into the edit.
There is actually another defining factor, which is definitely causing an issue with regards to getting it out for the end of January, is archive. Those that read our Kickstarter updates will be aware that we've had fun. The opposite of fun, believe me. But I was looking at the wrong bit then. Sorry. We've had fun with the archive, and just to give you an example, what will stand out from being either just a bunch of talking heads or an actual decent movie is actually when somebody's talking about something specific from, say, 1983, whether it be Curry's, W.X. Smith's, or a particular person or something else like that. You want to ideally cut to a visual. You want to cut to something that's appropriate, and that was the reason for the Kickstarter campaign back in February to April to raise money for archive. Now, once we raise the money, you then go off to the footage suppliers, and then you can actually start paying for the research and all the other things to start bringing the footage in. But this is the big problem with ITV, for example. Anybody can go on the ITV Motion Gallery, and you can type in hot words, and you can bring up things like as I said, curries or whatever you're looking for at that moment, or a person's name or a game title. But the BBC, as you may have,
it's a little bit of a different system.
It's a different system altogether. And what you often would get is a piece of text that would say comp progger with game. Saturday Superstore 1980, like 3rd of March 1984. So you've got no option but to pull the archive and check, because it might be, for all you know, it's a Chris Stamper interview, or it's just some journalist talking about some game no one's ever heard of. But you don't know, and if we're doing our job properly, we need to make sure. And that's exactly what we've been doing. We've also discovered lots of footage that no one knew existed, nobody knew existed, or it was improperly labelled. So we've been able to set that straight. We've also discovered footage that's been deleted, junked, and Doctor Who fans out there will know what that means, and things like that. So we've discovered a few bits and pieces like that. So the archive has taken a lot longer than we ever imagined, and we've been archivists for a long time.
It's been worth it. Some very, very good stuff going into the film now.
Yeah.
Oh, was there any Games World stuff?
None of it's come up.
No.
None of it. I mean, there's. When you get obviously to such as into the 90s, and you get things with Dominic Diamond and various other things, video gaming became that type of archive is a little bit simpler to source.
It's the 80s.
It's the late 70s and early 80s. When let's not forget, one of the things that we're really focusing on in the film is the there was an explosion across the UK in the late 70s, early 80s. And we need to try and sort of unearth as much of that as possible to try and sort of relay that into the interview footage we've got. And it's not just when you'll be surprised how much of it was actually recorded. The Money Program, if you remember that.
Yes.
That's it. That's it. It's been quite a lot of stuff on that. You'd be surprised.
It was like, responsibility, I can hear.
Sunday nights, wasn't it?
Soundtrack.
Sunday evenings. Yeah.
What? So has any of that actually gone into this film, the Money Program?
Well, shots from it, because if they did a feature, for example, on the beginning of the UK video games industry, where they interview people, where they interviewed various people and other things, yes, it's come up under archive, and you'd be surprised what they found. And you'd be surprised if they interviewed and didn't actually make a note of who it was. There'll be some surprises. There's been some footage that's come up. Because what you think is on YouTube, a lot of people say, it's just archive on YouTube. Well, archive on YouTube still belongs to somebody, and of course it's only a fraction of what's actually sitting in the vaults. And somebody has to go through it and actually see if it's worthwhile. I mean, you would not believe how many episodes of Saturday Superstore I've watched. The last. Yeah, the funny thing is, they'll list Bananarama and what track it was, but they won't then say, Mike Singleton's only ever interviewed talking about Lords of Midnight, which I thought was actually a major find. That wasn't logged. Yeah, but Bananarama's single of the week was. So it's quite.
Did really well to find that as well, Anthony. That was. That's amazing.
Jumpers to watch.
I don't know what's going on with Ben there. There's a giant caterpillar attacking.
What that was then?
But actually, speaking of Ben, hello Ben.
Hello, sorry, my laptop.
We've got a couple of questions for you here, directly for you. Oh, jeez. And Wingnut from Gaming History Source asks you a couple of questions. Here we go.
Yeah.
So, firstly, when making music for the various computers in the past, how difficult was it juggling the many programming languages?
It wasn't at all. It was all in ASM. It was all basically, you only had two machines, 6502 or Z80 ones. and then the 68,000 later with the ST and the Amiga. But no, I mean, it was the data format anyway that I used for music. We just had a driver, had drivers for the feed for the and then for standard AY driver for all the Z80 machines, you know, and just open the text file and recompile it basically. That's only going to make sense to about 20 people on the planet. But there you go, that's the answer. We didn't have programming languages in them days, son. And basic, we found out that basic was shit and it couldn't do what you needed. You went straight down to assembly language, basically.
So what was the easiest to program for? And at any time did you hit the limitations of the computer? That's Winknut's second question.
What was the easiest to program for? Sorry, was it?
Yes. What was the easiest to program for? Which was the computer that was the most simple to program for, would you say?
BBC. Didn't do a lot of games on the BBC, but yeah, the BBC was it was a beautiful machine, absolutely beautiful machine, and the architecture was all lovely. The sound chip was all right. Yeah, I mean the Commodore was again it was assembly language programming, so it wasn't really there wasn't really different degrees of difficulty, you know. They all had their own little quirks. But, they all kind of were much of a muchness.
Did you ever program anything for the Amstrad CPC with the BASIC?
The BASIC, no. Again, it was a Z80 driver I had for the CPC. I think, yeah. You couldn't do anything with the BASIC in that. So it was just machine code that you ran, and I think there may well have been some games that were written in BASIC, but I'm pretty sure they did whatever their equivalent of calling the assembly language routine was. I can't remember much about the CPC, to be perfectly honest.
Harry, one of the things that we discovered through all the interviews is that anybody that ever started out with BASIC, they might have done one game maybe on BASIC, and then they very, very quickly realised they needed to move off and moved up. And of course, back then it was all directly into hex machine code. Everybody that started in BASIC realised that it just wasn't good enough and needed to move on. Because don't forget, everybody was a lot of people were inspired by the arcade systems at the time, and were trying to emulate that.
The only things you used BASIC for were basically as loaders or something. So you'd have a bit of basic code that loaded up the assembly language and then ran it. You know, as far as I remember, you wouldn't ever use BASIC for any try to get any. Yeah, as Anthony said, after the first game, maybe like a basic thing just to work out like some graphics and stuff or something. But yeah, highly languages are for wimps.
Ben, you're starting to drop out again, unfortunately.
Close. Sorry, I'll try turning the laptop on again now, and hopefully we'll get another half hour before it overheats.
Always. Oh, okay. Okay, then I'll move on to a question for somebody else then, if you don't mind. Is that okay? Yes?
Yep.
Good. So, we've got a question here for you, Max. Max, hello? Hi. Hello. And this is from Josh. What was it like working with Ben and Rob Hubbard, and what will you take from the whole experience?
That's a question I hear every day, actually, and it's a good one, which is brilliant. It's been great working with both artists. They're obviously people that inspired me to write music in the first place, so to actually sit down and work with these guys has been amazing. It's been an absolute grin, it's been a laugh, and it's been very productive, and it's been very, very inspiring. That's probably the best way. There's no need to blush, Mr. Ben. I've learned so much from it. Both guys are completely different to work with. Rob and Ben have got a completely different way of working. Rob's more score-based, which is great because he like stuck a score in front of me and says, "Can you do that?" And I said, "No, I can't read music." Whereas Ben, it just comes in and does it, and is very animated, and it's fantastic to watch. And they're just two completely different people.
So when Martin comes down in December, will he be sort of in the middle, like lukewarm water?
I don't know about Martin yet. I mean, this is something that we have yet to discover. But if it's been as good as Ben and Rob, I am so looking forward to it. I think it'll be incredible.
Just to add, actually, we've actually been filming on the side a making of the music documentary, and we've been shooting at some of the sessions, and obviously we'll be shooting Martin's session in December. Well, it's actually probably likely to be early January, and it's been quite amazing to put that together. We released a couple of stills recently from that on the Kickstarter a couple of weeks ago for our backers.
They were brilliant. I can't wait to actually see all this, Anthony. I mean, obviously, I was in the zone. I want to see it.
It's really good stuff, actually. It's some amazing stuff.
Yeah. But going back to working with Ben and Rob, it's been a dream come true, and I can't explain it. I mean, people that are fans of these guys from the 80s and stuff, and to actually work with them, it's been amazing. And fanboy shit aside, it's been creative. You're laughing at that, aren't you? It worked. That's all I can say. It's worked, and it's been great, and it couldn't have gone any better. I'm really pleased with that, with the results, really. So basically about it.
Excellent. So we've got a question for you here, Anthony and Nicola. And this is from Steve. He asks, what was it like interviewing Matthew Smith, and how did you find him?
Matthew Smith was one of the loveliest people I think we've ever met.
He was fantastic.
He was. We interviewed him for nearly 3 hours, and we covered everything through his life, how he got into computers, his experiences with computing. And I think one of the things that when you watch, we released a short clip of him, and some people were a bit shocked, to see how much he's changed both physically and it seems mentally over the years. But I can tell you that the guy's a genius, and he was all there. It's just that his brain is wired in a very eccentric British way. He's not many people like him, but he was absolutely.
It was a wonderful day with him. Actually.
Totally
really,
lucid.
really nice.
It was absolutely brilliant day.
Yeah.
And we actually filmed his interview in the arcade that he grew up, that he used to go and play the games in as a boy. So it put him in a really good mind. So he was a brilliant interview.
Yeah.
And a real pleasure to meet him.
There's a bit, Anthony, on the preview that he showed at Play Expo where he's getting quite emotional.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Which I thought was quite moving, actually. I mean, obviously you've seen the whole interview, but I can see where that's going, and I think that's going to be quite an emotional interview with him.
It was quite emotional, actually. I think when we came away from that day, like I said, it was a lovely day, but yeah, it was hard. Some of the things that he was saying, very sad. But a lovely guy.
Obviously, it took him many years to get over the fact that he blamed video games for his life not going in the way that he hoped.
Yeah.
But he seems to have reached a peace with himself. He's at a point in his life where he's reached peace in the fact that he understands what went wrong and why, and he's quite happy with that now. He's not at war with himself now.
Right.
But it was it was an easygoing chat. Is probably the way of explaining that interview.
Yeah.
I mean, he's obviously a very, very well-known guy in the games industry, but this is what I like about the film that you're making. You do see something in the background, that you wouldn't necessarily know about. You know, I mean, people just know him as being the guy who did Manic Miner, which is absolutely fantastic. But you don't know his personal aspects of that, which I know that is said on the film, which is good. And
I was going to say, I don't think it's so much games as the industry, isn't it? I mean, that I think is one of the things that comes across from what I've seen of the film, and it's been interesting actually meeting back up with Rob a few times and talking to him about exactly the same experiences of the industry. You know, pardon me.
It's all about the people.
And I think that's what comes across a lot is the whole thing of when we started doing it, and the reasons we were doing it was because it was a fun thing to do.
Yeah.
And making money out of it was a massive bonus. And then as soon as it became an industry, a lot of the personalities. I tell you, this is one of the things why I have still enormous respect for Jeff Minter, because Jeff managed to stay Jeff Minter and to do the Jeff Minter thing to this day.
Yeah,
he's still
and he's one of the few kind of personalities I think that's managed to stick with it, and the industry doesn't have room for personalities.
No,
you know,
the industry is missing out because these guys are talented.
But all industries miss out. You know, the music industry misses out on millions of amazing musicians.
Yeah.
Because for all sorts of reasons. Basically, though, it's they can't make enough money out of them.
Exactly. Yeah.
And that's how it is. If you can't, you know, the industry couldn't make enough money out of Matthew Smith, as it were. So therefore, Matthew Smith doesn't get to play with the industry anymore.
Exactly. Yeah.
And that's why it's why I got out of the games industry. I got out at the point when I looked up one day, sitting in my office at Gremlin, realised I've been writing music 9 to 5, writing music office hours, and I looked up and there were salesmen walking around talking about shipping boxes, and I thought it's an industry, you know. It used to be all of us sitting in our bedrooms, literally. That was the point of the thing, you know. And now, no, not interested.
No.
There was a sort of hiatus. There was a period in the mid-90s when we lost, when huge numbers of our what you would call sort of legendary programmers, musicians just left the industry, and there was a real changeover between 1992 and 1996, a sort of three to 4 year period where the industry just went on its head. The UK industry, that is, turned on its head. And I have to say that was one of the fundamental questions that we had. When you start a documentary, you normally start off with a blank piece of paper and you write some questions on it. Where did the UK video games industry come from? Where did it go? And by where did it go, we meant really sort of what happened to the publishers. Why did we lose all our UK publishers? Why, you know, because there's still a lot of fantastic UK game development going on here, but there's no revenue coming into the UK in that respect. Not in the respect when you had companies like Gremlin and Ocean and other big giants effectively ruling Europe, and at certain points on equal footing with companies in the US during our peak. And there was amazing creativity and imagination and other things. And then suddenly, within a relatively short period of time, it was really all gone. And that was what we wanted to try and understand. We now know it took a lot of bloody interviews to find out why, and a lot of differences of opinion as well as to why. But in the end, the arrow flies through, and you can just see what happened. And it took a lot of it. That's probably why we kept filming interviews with people that had comments about that point.
That part has been edited.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yes, that part's mainly done now.
Let's finish that bit.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's actually the working title of that bit is called, just for our edit notes, it's called The Decline.
Yeah.
But you know, it's not. You know, this isn't a rise and fall movie.
No, there is good stuff in there. But,
is there? There's one good bit. There's one good bit in the film, guys.
Yeah.
And it's worth buying just for that. I've actually got a question. Somebody asked this actually in the stream not long ago. I might as well read it out a little bit early. I'll just scroll down to find it here. How exactly is the film going to be released? Is it a cinema release or TV or DVD? And that question is from JL76 Gaming.
This film is a film. It's a motion picture. It's a movie. We're making it as a movie. We're shooting it on 35mm lenses. So the rightful place for it to be is on the cinema screen.
Yes.
Our job as filmmakers is to do the best job that we can, and then to effectively encourage enough distributors to put it on the big screen. We do have a number of things in place already to ensure that it will be shown on big screens. We've actually already been asked by several cinemas effectively to screen the film, simply because it just so happens that those people who have that sort of control are in their mid-40s, early 50s, and are big fans of the source material. And I think that's one of the most amazing things about the film, is that there's an awful lot of people that lived through that era, either at school or, you know, they were the ones playing ZX Spectrums, Commodores, Amstrads, who are now in, I don't mean to be sort of nepotistic, but it's almost in positions of power. So they actually want to see the film and want to sort of shout about it, whether it's because retro is a big thing now and everything else, but there's a sort of a want to sort of shout the British tune a little bit. And just to sort of go on a little bit further, there was when we met John Hare a few years ago before we started making the movie, we bumped into him, and we were there. It was actually at BAFTA. I'm not trying to sound like a lovey or anything, but I mean, we were there just trying to get a free meal, and John was there about something completely different, and we just got chatting with him, and he told when we told him our idea and that we've been sort of pulling this idea along for a long time, he said, "Oh, do you know what? I'd love the idea of being able to show a film to my students," because he now does a lot of lecturing at Westminster University. And he said that I always have to start every year by talking to the students and saying to them about the British games industry, and they always say, "What British games industry?" And he sort of said, "Oh," and then he has to go into this 2-hour lecture about, "Oh, it all started in 1980," and he has to sort of explain to them that there was this amazing industry in this country with this explosion with effectively youngsters wanting and obsessively wanting to get into computing and games production and everything else. And so obviously that was, when he told us that, it was a bit of extra inspiration for us. And I've forgotten your question, and I have no idea.
You've answered it.
Yes.
It was the release of the film.
We'll have a theatrical release.
Yes.
And it'll be on more than just say a rainy Tuesday night in Grimsby or something like that.
Is it coming to Wigan?
We're actually talking about doing a roadshow.
All right.
So so there's a few things that we've got planned. But obviously the other thing is we don't want it in any way sort of hindering our Kickstarter and Indiegogo backers. We want to make sure they get their copies simultaneously. So.
Okay.
All will be revealed.
Yeah.
Well, you mentioned Kickstarter there. We have another question regarding Kickstarter here. And this is from Lawnboys Post 1975. He says, on a whole, what were your experiences like with Kickstarter, as it seems to be quite a Mermac thing amongst the public? Do you experience any negative aspects of using it?
There was no... I don't remember a single negative experience. I think what it's affect. I mean, we're very happy with it because it's allowed the film and Indiegogo. It's very important that we always talk about the Indiegogo backers as well, because that got the whole thing moving. So when I say Kickstarter, I mean Indiegogo and Kickstarter. But I think that it's there were no negative experiences whatsoever. But we do speak to people that are looking to run campaigns and things like that. And one of the things we always say is be prepared to work.
It's hard work.
It's more than it's a 16-hour job, a day job. It's really, really busy. You are constantly needing to update. You are answering continuous questions, and usually it's the same questions.
Just the questions you've been asked tonight, probably.
No, it's just things like shipping and you know how old. I mean, there's a couple of questions we got was are the Commodore 64s brand new? And you sort of very delicately sort of explain that. But the thing is, you also have to be careful because they could just mean, did we sort of, a bit like those Spitfires that were supposed to be buried in India.
Did you pull them out of a box and fly them again?
Exactly, you know.
Dug them up from people's gardens that buried them. They bought them brand new with the box and buried them in the garden.
The pilot's still sat in it as well.
Pointing into some random field. you know, found it all buried in there in cellophane.
But I mean, I would say our experience of Indiegogo and Kickstarter has been very positive, but it is very, very hard work. But you do hear some negative things about other people with their campaigns and that, but it's really quite an individual thing, isn't it? That you go, like,
every campaign is really genuinely different. It's because obviously the subject matter of that particular campaign is different, and the perks are different from one campaign to another. How you run it, I do notice at times. I mean, we don't really look at Kickstarter that much because obviously we're making the film. But one thing we do notice on certain campaigns that don't succeed, there seems to be some common themes that run through it, like not doing enough updates and other things. So we were always trying to sort of take advice from people as to how to do it, and you know.
I mean, I would also say, because it is only me and Anthony, and one of our biggest battles is reach. So when we were trying to get the word out there about us making this film and about running these campaigns, trying to get to people to spread the word is hard. It's very difficult to do that, and also now with the film, it's trying to get the word out there, you know, and trying to tweet as much as we can and Facebook as much as we can. So we're really relying on people to kind of spread the word about what we're doing and getting it out there, because that is our problem, isn't it? Reach.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, we've actually been the film, since the campaign finished, the film has been available for pre-order, you know, there's been a lot of Kickstarter campaigns with other people, and then they're running PayPal off their website, and you know, get successful games and other things, and we've been doing the same thing, and it's been pretty successful. It's allowed us to, there's a lot of extra archive and other things that we can now genuinely consider. You know, archive is incredibly expensive, and there's been a couple of things we've been able to consider because, you know, in the last 3 months there were another batch of generous people came in and pre-ordered the DVD or the Blu-ray. And now the soundtracks has been released a couple of weeks ago. Again, there's been people coming in and buying that, and it's allowed us to sort of expand up the soundtrack, and you know with Martin Galway and other things, we can sort of, you know, move that forward. So really, it's been a very organic process. It's basically been down to the individuals out there graciously donating and pre-buying that's made this possible. There's not been a distributor on board or anything else like that, the traditional ways of filmmaking.
So where can people pre-buy the film and indeed the soundtrack?
Basically, everything is available off www.FromBedroomsToBillions.com, and you know, on there you've got, we've also of course had artwork created specially by Oliver Frey, who obviously drew the main poster, and also a special edition poster, which you can obviously view and buy up on the website itself. A number of our backers on Kickstarter have actually got signed copies of those posters coming to them. But if you want to buy the posters or the
well, if you go to the website, you can pre-buy the soundtrack there and the film as well. And
you can also listen to the soundtrack. You can, at the moment, we are going to be releasing more. But when you pre-order the soundtrack and with the film as well, actually, there's exclusive content that you immediately get. As soon as you buy it, you'll be sent a link, which then allows you to download content which isn't going to be released in any other form. That includes obviously the soundtrack. When you buy the soundtrack, you immediately get the theme tune, and also, as Max has explained, Max, perhaps you could explain it, because it was your idea, these extra items for the soundtrack.
You obviously get the Rob Hubbard track New Frontier, which I should have played first time. You actually got a different version of something earlier. You get the Western track, which is the New Frontier. You do actually get a SID version of that as well, which is an exclusive Rob Hubbard SID track to play on the real Commodore 64, which is kind of a coup, which is cool. You get a FLAC version and a very, very good quality MP3 as well. So if you do pre-order that, you do get those, and I'm sure we are thinking of giving other things away in the near future as well. But if you do pre-order it, that's what you will get.
When somebody actually pre-orders, they immediately get added to the mailing list. And what happens is, when you pre-order, you get like an account, and when we add things, they automatically get added to your account, and then you get a message saying there's something new basically in your bin, as it were, and then you revisit it, and there's the new item, and then you can just download it. So the idea is, as we add more music to the soundtrack, we're going to add more things up into the into people's bins. I don't know. It's actually the technical term that
Caches.
caches. So basically, for example, with the film, when you say somebody pre-orders the film now, whether that be the digital download or the DVD or the Blu-ray, you immediately get 4 HD clips, extended interviews with Rob Hubbard, David Braben, Mel Croucher, and Matthew Smith. And that's material that's not going to be appearing in the on the film. It's extended interviews from them, and they're available now as soon as you actually buy it, as soon as you pre-buy.
It sounds better and better, this, you know, you're selling it to me. It's something of a crime, but I haven't yet pre-ordered, but I think I might go and have to after this. Yeah, definitely.
Thank you very much.
So, speaking of the soundtrack, Max, we have a question here for you, and indeed, Ben, if this applies to you as well. Max, what equipment did you use to produce the soundtrack, and was it fun making it?
To the second part of that question, yes, it was immensely fun.
Sorry, this question was from Toby.
Toby, hi Toby. Yes. Yeah, it was an immense amount of fun. The equipment I've been using, good question. Quite a lot, but the basic sequencer I use is Cubase 5. I've got a master keyboard which is a Korg M1. I'm going to bore you now with hardware details. We've used a combination of soft synths and hardware to produce tracks with Rob and Ben. I've used analog synthesizers SH101, SH09. There's soft synths which I'm just warming to. I didn't usually use them until this project came along. There's a Nexus synth that we've really used. There's an orchestral plugin which we use with Ben, which I'm not going to tell you which one it is because it's a secret.
It's a secret to
everybody. I think we might be able to abuse that one in future, eh, Ben? But yeah, it's basically a combination of hardware and software. Yeah. I think digital and analog stuff works well together nowadays, and I think that's what we've tried to do. So I hope that answers your question.
Yes, indeed. So, Ben, what equipment did you use, I guess, to create the tracks? What instruments, let's say?
I have my head and Max's keyboard to get the notes in. That was it. I never... I don't compose on instruments. I've always composed in my head, and so I always know what it is that I want. Because I'm not the world's best keyboard player either. I know what the notes are, and I put in what I can, and then I click around on the Cubase grid editor until they're the right ones, kind of thing. So my main instrument is a mouse, really, mouse and keyboard. You know. I know it's very sad, isn't it? I mean, everything else I do in life, it's all acoustic instruments. But whenever I'm writing stuff like this, it's programming it. Really, that's it's always been about the ability to be able to program music for me.
Max, why don't you play one of Ben's tracks from the film?
Yes, why not?
Do you want a bit of the old broken hornpipe?
Yes. Yeah. Oh, that sounds good.
Hang on now. Just bear with me one moment. Oh, wrong one.
I might have to tell them which sequence of the film I'm planning to use this in.
Okay, are you ready?
Nicholas going, what? It's in the film?
Can you hear
Good point.
That's brilliant. That's brilliant. It sounds like Captain Pugwash.
And I'll let Nicola tell you where the idea.
Well, we've talked about this being eccentric Britain, haven't we? So we think it's perfect for that, and we have actually started editing that sequence now. So is it in the film?
You see, the thing is, we need to try and understand what it is that caused this explosion of interest and non-commercial enthusiasm in the very early 80s for microcomputing. So in order to try and understand that, we need to understand about the British eccentricities and the psyche. And that's the idea, is to try and understand what it is about, what it is being British and all these sort of things that make us up, that make up who we are. So that music really just...
It's perfect.
It's perfect.
Yeah.
It's sort of slightly odd, eccentric British feel. And that's what we're saying about music that's been written specifically for sequences from the film. That's the plan.
What do you think, Ben?
No, I can see it working completely over shots of pigeons in Trafalgar Square and all those, you know, the bloke jumping off Beachy Head with the homemade gliders. Or whatever it is, you know?
Oh, yes.
It's very British, that, yes. Of course.
Going to see in a bathtub.
Yeah.
I'm going to take over India.
Exactly. There's something sort of slightly...
It's that eccentric thing, that feeling that we think it captures.
It's like when you go abroad and you can always tell who the Brits are. You know, 'cause we're the ones that are as daft as brushes. You know, it's you just look...
Like handkerchiefs on your head and stuff like that.
Yeah. Well, we're all daft as brushes, we know that. So.
Yeah.
Yes, at least we admit it.
Yes.
We do. Yes. Yes. I love that track. I think it's brilliant.
Brilliant.
Yes. Very well done, Ben.
Thank you.
Yes. I look forward to seeing that in the film.
My own.
I will actually say there's several pieces of music Ben's done, but there's a piece we're working with right now at this moment, which is on the which is basically showing the influence of the Japanese consoles as they were coming in the late 80s, early 90s, and it's absolutely fantastic piece of music.
Interesting one.
Absolutely brilliant.
Brilliant. We have another question here, and this one's from RetroUnlim. To go on a little bit of a different tangent, he asks, do you have any funny stories from any of the interviews, Anthony and Nicola?
You know what? I knew you were going to ask us that.
I know, because you're watching the comments, aren't you?
I'm going to sleep.
No, I was just thinking, I bet they're going to ask us, because we've been told so many. And it's like sometimes when you can think of a joke when you're in the bath, and yet when you're suddenly out in a social environment where people turn to you to tell them a joke, you can't bloody remember. And I think there's one in particular that we've been editing recently, which is with Lure the Temptress, Charles Cecil. Now, bearing in mind the build-up to Charles Cecil and his software house was that effectively he was a one-man band, and Lure the Temptress represented his last chance of trying to make some money out of the UK games industry. And he'd written the game on his PC, which basically he was almost broke, and he had a meeting down in London with a possible distributor. I think it was Virgin, off the top of my head. It's obviously be accurate in the film because we've got the bloody interview. And he basically came down to London, didn't even have enough money to book a hotel room. The meeting was the next day, so the idea was he was going to sleep in his car. And on the back seat of the car was the PC with Lure the Temptress loaded on it, because obviously he didn't want to try and create multiple floppies. He thought, I'll leave it on the hard drive of the PC. And then it just happened that he met a friend, and he slept on the friend's sofa, and left the car outside. And the meeting was at 10 o'clock the next morning. Anyway, he walks out of the guy's house at 8:30 in the morning, and there's his car with the window smashed. And he's like, I don't believe it. I left the PC on the back seat. My life is over. My last chance. And he went in, and it was a relatively crap car. And there was the stereo being ripped out, and he looked on the back seat, and there was the PC. They'd left the PC, the most expensive thing in the actual car, and just ripped the stereo out. Yeah. And he went to the meeting, was able to show the game, got signed. The game came out, big success, and then he went on with Beneath a Steel Sky and onwards and upwards, Broken Sword and everything from
That
from
goes to show you how easy it is to go tits up, isn't it?
exactly. There is one other
Oh,
story.
there's a
Stuart
Matthew
Fotheringham.
Smith one,
There's
yeah.
a great Matthew Smith
Matthew
story.
Smith story, yeah.
Now, is any of your listeners aware of the words Holt Road? Holt Road in Liverpool. The Holt Road story is basically where the sequel to Jet Set Willy. Okay, so you've had Manic Miner, Jet Set Willy, and this long thought next game, which is going to be called Miner Willy Meets the Taxman, and not Megatree. That seems to be a massive misunderstanding. That it was
Yeah, it's not Megatree.
it was Miner Willy Meets the Taxman, and the software project's been waiting for months and months and months for this fabled third final game in the trilogy. And Matthew was finding it more and more difficult to actually write it. So basically they said, okay, what we're going to do is we're going to stick you in a house in Holt Road with two guys. One of them was Stuart Fotheringham and the other one was Mark Dawson. And we're going to give you, I think it was about 100 quid a week.
Yeah.
You live in that house, 100 quid a week, and in 3 months' time you give us the game. And it was like, no problem. So anyway, they go there. What do you think when you've got a 16-year-old, a 17-year-old, and a 19-year-old in a house with drugs, basically just living that life? They're just going to go nuts. Pizzas, drinking.
License, yeah.
And we've actually been given all the photographs. Mark Dawson had a camera, and he's graciously donated all the photographs from those 3 months. It's absolutely amazing, the material that we've got on that. But the story is, on one particular night, after about 6 weeks, the £100 that was supposed to be posted through their letterbox, and if Stuart Fotheringham's listening, it's probably not 100 quid, but it was certainly a significant amount of money to keep them going each week, wasn't posted through the letterbox. So Matthew said, this is, because it's a Friday, they obviously wanted to go out and spend all the money. So basically he said, well, I'm co-own software projects. Let's go to the office and raid the petty cash. So they all get on Matt's bike and drive into the centre of Liverpool to go to software projects. They get there at like 7 o'clock at night and it's shut. So they basically break in. They get into the office, and where the petty cash is inside a locked office. So if you imagine, just try and picture in your head, it's all glass, right? It's glass offices, and they can see through the glass where the lockbox is.
There's our beer.
They can't get in, the door's locked. And Matthew comes up with this idea, and he says, I know, what I'll do is I'll stand on this desk and I'll push the suspended ceiling panel out, climb into the ceiling, climb over, pull out the ceiling panel and drop down. Open the lockbox, and then I can unlock the door, get in, got the money.
Video game logic.
Stuart Fotheringham standing there, Mark Dawson standing there, and they're watching effectively one of our most famous games creators ever, climbing on a desk, climbing up into the ceiling, disappears. Well, you can imagine about 5 seconds later, there's this unbelievable crash back into the ceiling, and lands basically unconscious onto the desk. But what was funnier was they said there was then this unbelievable cloud of dust that just wafted from the ceiling and hit the glass and filled the whole locked office. And they said, with this dust, and they said for the next 5 minutes we basically couldn't see Matthew. They had Matthew unconscious in a locked office with a cloud of dust. It just, and the whole ceiling had collapsed.
And he couldn't unlock the door.
And they couldn't unlock the door. They had to wait for him to actually wake up and then open the door, of which they raided the cash and then left.
So it worked in the end, then, I suppose.
So that's one particular. We've got.
There's some funny stories.
We've got Fotheringham actually telling us that story.
Yeah.
Yeah, probably a lot better than I probably just told it. But that was a particular standout moment. I think that Holt Road adventure represents a really great moment in the film, actually, because we've got the photographs. You see, we've got the photographs to back it up. Was that all right?
Yeah, that was brilliant. Yes. Well, we've got a couple more questions, then I think we should wrap it up. Last call for questions, guys, and then, well, we'll probably give it another 10 minutes. Okay, here we go. Snatcher52 asks, during the production of bedrooms to billions, have there been any stumbling blocks? Was there anyone who you would have liked to have participated in the film but couldn't for whatever reason?
I think I have to, in a way, not answer that one as clearly as we'd like to. There have been a number of individuals that have declined to be interviewed and then have changed their minds. And while technically the film production is still open, we don't want to reveal who is still declining to be interviewed, because if we then say it, and then it sort of finalises it, because you'll be surprised how many people have changed their minds. And that's happening on a regular basis. I mean, bearing in mind, people have been approaching us, and we've sort of had to say, with the greatest respect, it's just impossible to interview thousands and thousands of people. It just wouldn't make a movie. It'd be impossible. And somebody's story has to be relatively stand out now to get in, or relatively significant. But that, I would say, there are individuals. They are stumbling blocks. Certainly when they're people that really mean something to you, and you really feel they should be lining up in that film. There have been some. One of the stumbling blocks, I will say, is there's been some misconceptions about what the film actually is, and that fortunately has really started to change now. When people sort of obviously didn't realise that it was a proper movie, and the way that we were actually approaching it, and also the way the interviews have been done. They've been handled in a particular way where when people are surprised that it's that we're asking for their personal stories, and I cannot tell you the number of times that when we finished an interview with somebody, that you'd be surprised how many people have broken down, or have found the whole thing very cathartic, where they've just basically it's like a weight that's been lifted off them. I cannot tell you how many times that's happened, where they've just said, "Well, you know, I can even tell you, and I can't tell you who they are." But there's a couple of individuals that have actually gone back into the industry because they've done the interview. And that's no joke, because they've written to us afterwards and said, I sort of buried my demons. When I did the interview, I sort of realised what was bothering me all these years, and I now feel like I want to get back in again. And, you know, one of them is very high profile, actually. But we can't reveal who that is yet, I'm afraid.
That's cool.
Yes, cool indeed. Hello, Ben. I see you're on your mobile phone again here. We've got. Sorry.
I said, yeah, the laptop went again.
You look like you're in a hammock there.
Killing.
But well, it's not so much of a question. It's more of a request.
Oh yeah.
From RetroUnlim here. He asks, Ben, can you play using your plethora of instruments there the Last Ninja theme?
Yes, just to put you on the spot.
Good luck. Good luck playing it and holding your mobile.
Which one do you want? No. How's that Ninja go? Remind me.
I'm not sure.
Get into me later and I'll play it. I can't remember which
Someone in the comments hum it for us, and he can play it.
Can you sing me one of them? There were so many. No.
Can I just say, while he's working this out, that while we were filming part of the documentary of the making of the soundtrack, Max put trap on, and Ben actually picked up a guitar and played flawlessly the theme tune to Trap while Trap was the Sid of Trap was playing. That was quite amazing. We got that on film.
No.
Get this one. That one.
No. No, I can't do that right now.
Oh, I've lost it.
No, give it another. Give me 10 minutes to prepare next time, and I'll have them under my fingers. But not right now. Sorry. Fail.
Play on the triangle here.
Play it on the original
C.
Tap on the whistle.
Do deflector on your flute. Yay.
There you go.
That's the one.
Yes, the flute, the most portable of all instruments.
Whistle. Love it.
Hey!
Yes.
Very well done, sir.
Fantastic. Okay, then I'm just going to check to see if we've had any more comments. And if not, I believe that'll be time to wrap up. Unless any of you guys want to say anything.
Well, would you like to hear? I'll ask Max. There's a little stab of music which was nicknamed outro for quite a long time, which features a lot. Which features a lot of us on the track actually, and I can't remember what we named it now, Max. Because it very recently changed.
I've got one or two that says outro.
Called.
Stay with me one moment, Was it one we did quite a while ago?
It's called, yes, it was the one we recorded back in February. It's got my guitar on it actually. The
Would it be one called Solitude?
That's it.
Okay, I can play that.
Oh, is this the outro tune to the whole film?
No, this is just a piece. This is to do with basically night coding through the night. Because a lot of people told us about deadlines where they were just coding solidly through the night, through the day. Some would go up, some would come down, some would go up, some would come down. And it was a very sort of solitary process. So this piece of music came very much from that.
Okay,
This is a direct collaboration between myself and Rob and Max. So the three of us very much sort of wrote this together.
It is. It's quite a long track, so I'll just whack it in the middle.
Halfway through or something, it'll be fine.
Yes. Excellent, yes, I really enjoyed that. A small round of applause, I think.
Yeah. Going back to the question that the guy asked me earlier, there's a lot of analog synths in there. You probably heard, you know, like go up in there.
There's a great bit crusher at the end you put on that, Max, as well.
There is a great bit of bit crushing at the end of that, yeah.
Lovely bit of bit.
But there's Anthony's guitar in there, there's Rob Hubbard's piano. It's just an amalgamation of... It works, doesn't it? And I think that was one of the first ones that we did, wasn't it, for the soundtrack?
It was, yeah. I think, yeah, it was the second track that Rob worked on, and
yeah,
we've got a bass, funky bass line in there, and all sorts. Yeah, it's quite a dense track, that one.
Quite pleased with that one.
Tour de force. It's a musical tour de force.
A tour de force.
You're lightning quick with that effect.
He's used it before, hasn't he? Well, while we were playing that, though, we've had just one more question, and then I promise that we'll wrap up. It's from Dave Moore. He says, "Greets everybody."
We know Dave
Okay.
Moore. Hello, Dave.
Oh, you know Dave Moore?
I know Dave
yeah.
Moore.
Oh, okay. Here we go.
Hello, Dave.
Hello.
Hello, Dave. For Ant and Nick, have there been any instances whereby you've filmed interviewees giving cracking stories, but you simply can't feature them on the DVD due to fear of legal follow-ups, etc.? If so, can you give any examples without naming names?
I'll be honest with you. I don't think there's anything.
There's maybe a couple.
It's not really a reputation burner. It's not where people have been trying to sort of. There's been a couple of individuals that have cropped up whose names get mentioned. One or two people. You can sort of mark their name, as it were. But it's like a you don't really. It's not really about sort of destroying those sort of those reputations. It's not really sort of our sort of place to do that. And I don't think there's anything that we could say that we can't put in. I know what Dave's suggesting, but it's not really about that. It's every industry has its villains, as it were, or sort of baddies and things like that. And the music industry, film industry, and there's no real individual that caused the sort of destruction of the UK video games industry or anything. There's certain individuals that made a lot of money, that could be argued didn't have a lot of talent, but you could also argue that perhaps they were good at business and were able to exploit those. But again, that's something you could easily level at the music industry and the film industry over the years. There's been a lot of stuff where we've shut the camera off at the end, and then bloody some fantastic stories have suddenly come out. I think things like drug references and other things as well about the games industry, about how many developers were stoned, is something that comes out once the camera's turned off. It's it's sort of it'd be a very different story, I think. But again, it's not really about that. It's because again, you can level that at sort of numerous other creative industries. So no, there's not really been anything I could sort of say. Oh yeah, somebody mentions somebody. There was one story actually. So naming no names. Don't worry, Nick. I just felt a tense next to me.
Be careful what you say. Yeah.
There was two. There was a programmer and a musician who told us a story about how they hadn't been paid. This was in the mid-80s. So basically, they found out they hadn't been paid to work on a game, and they sort of were in the pub one day, like, bloody hell, we haven't been paid for this. This is a programmer and a musician, and they thought, right, we've had a couple of pints, we're going to get in the car, and we're going to go right round there now, and we're going to insist on our money, and we're going to ring them and tell them we're on our way. So they did it. They rang them and said, we're coming down, we want our money ready for us. They got in the car, and when they got there were two huge guys basically holding cricket bats standing outside the place, like waiting for them. And they literally just got out the car, got straight back in the car, and drove off. And just thought, let's just write that one off. And I actually asked, did you get paid? He's like, no, never got the money. Never got the money for that one. And that came up from two separate people. And then obviously we were able to work out who it actually was and who the person held out.
So that definitely gets brought up in the film, yes.
It gets brought up in the film, yeah, because they're not naming who it was.
Oh, okay.
So again, it's not really a legal.
I mean, everything that we kind of do is going to be run past a lawyer anyway. Yes.
We know who it was.
Yeah.
We know because we asked as soon as the camera was turned off. Who was that? Yes. We do know, but again, as I said, in any industry, there's stories like that. Comic book industry, film industry, music industry, of people being ripped off, and
every industry
and stuff. So it's not really.
All right, I promise this is going to be the last question, and it's actually
I've enjoyed it.
A request. Right? Okay, this is from Jim Bagley.
Oh, Jim. Hello, Jim.
Actually, get your button ready, Max, because he says, Max, say another visitor. Stay a while. Stay forever. Through the sound system.
Okay, this is for you.
Another visit. Stay away. Stay forever.
Yeah. Destroy him, my robots.
Oh, go on, man. I might even try a bit of feedback here. Hang on.
Destroy him, my robots.
Didn't Dennis Caswell say about that they literally just went to some guy in the accounts department and asked him to record the audio for that? Wasn't it? It just sampled him doing 3 lines. I'm sure I read that in Retro Gamer once.
I reckon that were in other retro game about Speech Synthesis Limited or whatever it were.
It could be pretty good sampling the Commodore 64.
I don't know how they squeeze the game in on that.
Yeah.
It
It's a
takes a lot of
single
memory,
mode, isn't it?
Lovely game.
Great game.
Oh, brilliant game, yeah.
Well, probably what they did was when the game opens, if you notice, you haven't got active gameplay, so the first sample probably gets flushed out of memory once it says "I'll stay forever." That probably gets kicked out, and then probably as each sample plays, it then doesn't get. It just gets flushed from. That's probably how he did it.
Yeah, I don't know, but it's very clever and it's very memorable for everybody who had a Commodore 64. I think that one.
Absolutely. You know, I got asked today by Computer Music. They said, which is the better machine, the Commodore 64 or the ZX Spectrum?
Oh, you can't answer that question.
You want me to be hung from a nearby lamppost if I actually go on record and say which one that is? Bearing in mind, Nick was the ZX Spectrum 48K user and I was the Commodore 64 user. We didn't know each other back then. We only met in 1990. So
you can't really answer that question, especially in public.
And if Dave was watching,
What was that, Ben? I can't hear you, mate.
what about the BBC? What about the BBC B? You know.
It was a TRS-80. So.
But for Dave Moore, as I know Dave Moore's watching, we're going to say that the BBC... Oh, by the way, again, for the benefit of Dave Moore, we had the most fantastic interview to do with Frack. You will love it. With
Frack?
Nick. Yeah.
Frack.
That came through Dave Moore's insistence that we interview more BBC. So we sought out Nick Pelling, and he gave us this fantastic piracy story about.
Oh,
Frack.
he's got a very funny story,
Oh,
actually.
is that the rude version?
You said to him, "Oh, well, here's your copy of Frack," as if it's something automatically should be pirated.
I have got the rude version somewhere.
Yeah. You said that people kept changing the name.
Yeah. There is a version where the caveman's walking around. I'm not saying it on here, but yeah, he's rather aroused, let's say.
But he's a really Nick Pelling is again another genius.
Yeah.
A really, really lovely guy. Gave us a couple of hours of his time and
Nice one.
very funny, very
Yeah.
funny. Great.
Classic. Where's he gone?
Oh, we've been dumped.
Oh,
Sorry?
Oh,
there. I think he's just listening to us banter.
Yes, I'm listening. Sorry, I'm just deciding whether to... See, we've had another flood of comments basically in the last 5 minutes, and I'm deciding whether we should just go for one last question.
Go on,
Because
Yeah, fine.
Kevin Phillips asks, one last question, sorry. Does the film make any comment about the impact of this British era on the rest of the world? The whole 8-bit era of the 80s as a kid here in New Zealand is so similar. All the magazines, though at the time they would arrive about 3 months later due to the way that things worked back then. The computers and the software were prevalent here. I'm sure it's the same for the other countries. And that's the end of the comment.
It's a very good question.
It's a very, very good question because the answer to that is yes. But obviously the film is the story of the UK video games industry, and part of that story is that, contrary to popular belief, we did actually export. We were exporting games, and we were actually successful at it to a certain degree, even up until the mid-1990s. So the answer is yes, and that, people don't realise, for example, this is obviously, I appreciate the questions to do in New Zealand, but people don't realise that there was a massive, massive scene in Spain and Italy for British games. I mean, they had their own scenes there as well, but New Zealand and Australia, and a huge number of our Kickstarter backers are from Australia and New Zealand.
I
They couldn't believe it, you know. So we've got, you know, yes, our games did spread right the way out, and yes, it's being featured in the film.
I was going to say, I always find it funny that US Gold started by Jeff importing games from America because they were supposed to be the best games, and it ended up by exporting games from Britain to America.
That's right. That's right. Now, and I have to actually just say to you, I know Nicola is very strict about how much we actually reveal from the film, but I've got to say that Nicola is obviously heading up all the editing, and I came in 2 days ago, and we were debating for quite some time on how to bring Jeff Brown into the film, the US Gold story, the beginning of that story, and basically we've been recutting it and cutting it. And I came in the edit suite the other day, and Nick showed me the new sequence for how Jeff's entrance to the film, and I was blown away. I mean, it was absolute, and it's hilarious as well because it's a really funny story. How Jeff was a teacher and suddenly he became a distributor of video games by complete accident. I mean, it really was. I mean, there was an element of entrepreneurial skill there, but it was genuinely an accident.
It's a lot of like coincidences, isn't
yeah,
it?
Huge
luck.
coincidences.
And he does say that there's a lot of luck involved.
And how clueless he was at business. How he just literally was putting one foot in front of the other. And then we do this sequence where we show how many games, 223 games US Gold went on to distribute over the next 12 years, 11 years. And I don't know if many people know this, but everybody associates Tomb Raider with IDOS. It's actually a US Gold game. And IDOS bought US Gold just before the game came out. It was actually Jeff Brown that discovered Tomb Raider. There you go. It's just that he had to sell the company because they were struggling.
They dumped a load of games at that time. We were, me and my partner were working on writing some adventure games for US Gold at the time, and I just scrapped all the development that was happening for US Gold. Just basically bought them out for the licenses.
That's right. That's right. And he's quite philosophical about it as well, talking about that. He was quite happy to get out in the end, and he was like many other people by 1995 was very burnt out, And when you hear you hear the way that the Japanese consuls were effectively doing business, not illegally, I hasten to add, but they were just trying to make sure that they had complete control over the way business was done.
But it's just a different way of doing business.
That's where the British financiers and banks needed to step up. Because the American companies had those same issues, but they were able to find the finance. And that's one of the questions we were asking: why did companies get bought out? Why were we not actually seeing the way video games were going and significantly raising our finance when we already had large companies that could have done that, but they didn't? They chose to sell out, and a lot of it was burnout. You know, it just would have required incredible effort to try and continue to raise that sort of money to move. Yeah. With game development in the mid-90s, which was moving into millions and millions per game.
A lot of pressure.
A long time. Very serious.
Yes, very serious on the RetroUnlim live stream, as usual. As our regular viewers would know. See, Ben, I have a question for you here, actually. This is from... Next question. From Snatcher52.
Excuse me.
What's your favourite composition that you've created, and favourite track that anyone else has created?
Good question.
So what's your favourite child?
Name your favourite child.
But my usual track for my favourite that I wrote, I think. At some point I'll get the definitive version out of my head, but Trap, I think, is my little mini symphony.
We love Trap.
Didn't somebody ask that question at Play Expo? I seem to remember.
Yeah, they always ask it. Yeah. And my favourite track of somebody else's is... I don't know. I always love Master of Magic.
Oops.
Sorry? Sorry, keep dropping out.
What was that, Ben? We didn't get the last bit of that.
Masters of Magic.
Oh,
okay.
Hubbard.
Yeah.
Oh, Sin Energy.
I love that game. I love that game.
Yeah.
A nice rendition of that there as well. Thank you.
Brilliant. That's the one.
Isn't that the Nokia ringtone?
I love me a bit of medals in the group.
Could have been.
Okay, guys. Anything that you'd like to say before we wrap up?
Well, we always like to, whenever we get a chance, we always like to say thank you again to everybody that funded the Indiegogo and the Kickstarter campaigns. You know, we don't want to sound like a broken record, but we always make sure we always thank them again, because obviously without them this film wouldn't be happening. And also the people that have been coming in and pre-buying the film and the soundtrack. Every penny helps us, because, as I said, you know, it's a bit like building a house. You know, if we get a bit extra money, we can get the price instead of just the normal white switches and things like that, and that makes the difference between one piece of archive or 3 pieces of archive and everything else. So from us, it's just a case of continuing to plug the website, www.fromBedroomsToBillions.com, and drop us a line. You know, stay in contact with us, everybody. That's our son, by the way. He's supposed to be in bed.
He's having a late
You
night.
try editing at night, and he keeps walking in the room.
What's his thoughts on the film?
What do you think of the film, Thomas? Hey.
Yay!
There you go, you got in it. He's a happy boy now, isn't it?
Actually, what game were you playing the other day that you thought was fantastic? Was it Man at Minor, wasn't it? We're not just insisting that he plays
He has
retro
to
games.
play retro
We
games.
make it homework, he has to play retro games and everything. No.
Retro that we give you.
Oh, I tell you what you did like. You loved Another World.
What?
On the Amiga.
Didn't
You loved
see it.
Another World. Sorry,
That's
we're
a
just
fantastic game.
Yeah.
Well,
one of
fantastic.
our favourite ever games, actually. Eric. Shy. Yeah.
There you go. There you are.
Just say, it's bedtime for you.
Yeah.
It's got overheating, by the way. That's why Max has turned into something out of Tomorrow People. Everything's gone blue on the screen, basically. You look like it's one of those X-rays, you know, the...
It's going on.
What on earth's going on? Is that a lightsaber?
Oh, no,
Oh, this is all very bizarre.
Yes. Hands, isn't it?
You don't feel confident now.
Watched by the whole internet.
You've done it. You got in there.
He's in.
Okay, Retro Unlimiters, thank you very much for joining us tonight. That's the end of tonight's From Bedrooms to Billions live Q&A. It's been an absolute pleasure talking to Anthony, Nicola, Max and Ben. Thank you very much, everybody.
It's been fantastic. Really enjoyed
Thank
that.
you very much for having
Yeah.
me. Can we finish with a sort of 2 Ronnies, Homo, just saying? So it's good night from Ben.
It's good night from
It
him.
doesn't work with 4 people, does it, actually?
We can do that, but only if Max plays it through his delay effect.
And please visit our website.
I'm free to this.
Visit the website for the good night from me.
And it's
Good night.
good night from
Bye.
him.
See ya.
Bye.